Hello and welcome to the Clarity 16.1.2 Feature Supportability Training. My name's Catherine Ellis and I'm a Product Manager with Clarity. 16.1.2 Resource and Staffing Management. Staffing Workspace Enhancements. In the Allocations timeline, a new view option allows the user to toggle between the allocation or hard allocation fields, or both. Unstaffed resources now appear in the Allocations by Resource layout, which matches the staffing plan behavior. Ability to configure the over-under threshold and have the colors respond to the changes in configuration. Users can leverage the starred field on the resource and investment objects in the Allocations timeline and histogram. And as a separate note, we also added the starred as a new filtering field in the Project Tiles page. Additional enhancements on the Allocations timeline includes a new toast message that pops up after using the quick add to add staff or investments. And the first column is frozen so it remains visible when scrolling forward to look at other columns in the layout. And the data displayed in the Edit Allocations modal has new behavior variations when launched from the timeline versus histogram that matches the staffing plan behavior. Why are these enhancements important in the staffing workspace? The ability to view and edit hard allocations, filter by starred or favorite resources or investments, and to configure the over-under threshold colorization is important for providing the remaining comparable capabilities from the staffing plan workspace due to the announced deprecation. The usability enhancements will make it easier to use the staffing workspace for resource managers or investment managers to focus on the immediate needs for analyzing capacity versus demand. And the ability to filter by starred projects on the project tiles is a customer idea implemented to help improve usability in this workspace. For performing staffing activities, a user needs permissions to resources, investments, and booking rights. Our resource manager, Ray, will primarily use the Allocations by Resources layout, also referred to as R2I. Ray needs to have visibility into all his people regardless of what they're working on or not. As a resource manager, he's automatically granted permissions to view his own people and has also been granted separate permissions to view other resources, roles, or teams. The R2I layout provides the capability for Ray to primarily focus on his people and to use filtering to target a set of resources. When the grouping row of a resource is expanded, the list of all associated investment allocations are shown for that resource, regardless of Ray's access to the associated investments. The list of investments can be further reduced by using filters on the investment or staffing allocation fields. Our investment manager, Dana, will primarily use the Allocations by Investment layout, also referred to as the I2R layout. As an investment manager, Dana is automatically granted permissions to view and edit her investments. When the grouping row of an investment is expanded, the list of all staff members are shown regardless of Dana's permissions for viewing the staff members. The list of staffed members can be further reduced by using filters on resource or staffing allocation fields. Access into the Edit Allocations modal and the list of resources in the histogram are dependent on the user having access to view the resources, roles, and team. To perform staffing activities, to manage the allocations, the user will need to have the appropriate soft or hard booking permissions. In the prior release, we introduced an improvement for showing unstaffed investments and the ability to quickly add staff members from the Allocations by Investment layout. And we introduced the ability to quickly add investments to resources, roles, and teams from the Allocations by Resource layout. In this layout, we were missing the visibility of the unstaffed resources, roles, and teams. Now, in this release of 16.1.2, You can see the unstaffed resources and use the right-click context action to quickly add an investment to an unstaffed resource. A new toast message appears after performing a quick add when adding an investment to a resource or when adding a staff member to an investment. New view options are now available to display either allocations, hard allocations, or both. The labels for this type of allocation will only appear when both is selected. From your Avatar Settings General page, you'll see the new option to configure the allocation threshold values. In the prior release, the default colorization for over-under threshold was at 0%, meaning anything over 100% showed red and anything under 100% showed green. With the introduction of the new configuration setting, a new default is implemented that matches the default from the Staffing Plan workspace. Anything over 110% shows red, and anything under 70% shows green. This threshold setting can be changed per user and is persisted until changed. Valid data entry values for both settings is 0 to 100. No negative values are allowed. Here is a comparison of the default settings from the prior release to this new release. You can see immediately after upgrade, the over-under threshold colors will be different. Please alert all users with access to this workspace of this change. We can see the threshold colors on the Allocations by Investments layout when we expand the investment grouping row. The colors here now respond to the threshold configuration setting. This color is based on the resource's total active non-template investments per period allocation or hard allocation amounts. In this release, we introduced the threshold colors in the resource grouping row on the Allocations by Resources layout. For the amounts and colors shown on this grouping row, it is impacted by the filter criteria. For example, if Tom is truly allocated to more investments, but the filter reduced the list of investments for Tom, the child rows will roll up to Tom's grouping row and the color will be applied based on this total amount, not on Tom's total active non-template list of allocations for that period. The threshold configuration applies to the resource histogram as well. The numbers represented here are always the total active non-template allocations or hard allocations over the resource's availability for the period. The Edit Allocations modal displays colors based on the threshold configuration, but the behavior of the modal, when launched from the timeline versus the histogram, will produce different results. Opening the modal from the timeline provides greater control over what is shown for better focused work. When the user opens the modal from the timeline, the list of allocations is affected by the filtering in either layout, by resources or by investments. Filtering on the fields from the investment objects or from the staffing allocation object that changes the list of allocations shown in the timeline affects the list of allocations shown in the modal. You can see the totals and colors in both the timeline and the modal match due to the filtering. When the user opens the modal from the resource histogram, all active non-template allocations are always shown. It is not impacted by any filter criteria. You can see the totals and colors in both the histogram and the modal match. In this release, we're now leveraging the starred field found on the resource and investment objects. The user has the ability to mark investments or resources starred within the respective investment or resource workspaces, and that starred value will show up here in the staffing workspace. This field can be used for filtering when in either grouping layout, by resource or by investment, and it can be updated in the timeline. Because the resource histogram is read-only, the starred field cannot be updated, but it can be used for filtering. The first column in both the timeline and histogram is fixed with the ability to adjust the width of the column. so that if there are more columns in the layout, the user can scroll forward without losing the information from the first column. The starred field is now available as a filter field on the Project Tiles page. Users can mark projects starred within the project or within the project workspace, or now in the staffing workspace allocation timeline where this field is available to edit. Once the project is marked as a starred project and the user filters for starred projects, it will show in the list of results. In this demonstration, you'll see how to manage allocations in the staffing workspace from the perspective of our resource manager, Ray Fowler. We'll log into the system as Ray. He is our resource manager, and we'll focus on the allocations by resource in the new staffing workspace. Let's take a look at Ray's configuration from his General Settings page. We can see that Ray's using the % availability unit of measure, and there's two new options here for the over-under allocation threshold. Anything over 110% will now be red. Anything under 70% will be green. And so you can see here that these items over 110% are red. Anything under 70% is green. And any total allocations that are in between are not colored. And when we look at the resource histogram, the same can be said here, except this is gray instead of no color at all. If it's 0, it's no color. The second thing we want to look at is unstaffed resources. In this environment, you can see that we have a couple of people that are unstaffed. You can tell that a person is staffed when they have a little arrow next to them. So you can see that Bernard has some investment here, and he's been staffed at 95% for that investment. However, if we look at Nicole, you can see that she is unstaffed and is not allocated to anything. And if we open up her Modal, you'll see that she has no investments allocated to her. Let's quickly add an investment to Nicole, and you'll see the new toast message pop up. We'll add her at 95% as well. And you see the new toast message comes up. And that message will appear when you're doing the addition of an investment to a resource, or if you go on the other layout and you do the addition of staff to an investment. And you can see that Nicole's row is updated, and when you expand, you'll see the allocation record. And when you open up the modal, you'll see the record is there. The next thing we want to show is the starred feature. We can now add a column for starred in the top panel. As you notice, there's only one starred field in the column panel, and it's under the staffing object. Just because it's under the staffing object doesn't mean that it refers to the allocation record. Because we are in the allocations by resource layout, it is focused on resources. So this starred field is going to apply to resources. Let's move the field over. And you can see that there are some resources starred. And it only shows up starred on the grouping row for that particular resource. So if I were to open this up, you would see that the star does not apply to the allocation record, which you can do. You can star the allocation records in the staff grid, but that is separate functionality and is not related to the star here in the allocation timeline. And you could see that Bernard has the star in the bottom as well. We'll add the column there. And because the bottom panel is the resource object only, it doesn't include the staffing or investment objects, you'll see that these are the direct starred field values. And you could see Bernard is starred there. Now this resource histogram is read-only. You cannot make any edits to any of the resource properties in this workspace. But if you have the starred up here in the top, you can update it. So let's look at the Bernard is starred here, and he's starred here. Let's go into the resource workspace and look at him there as well. And you can see that Bernard Luke is starred. You can unstar him from here, or we can go back while we're in the staffing workspace. We don't have to go to the resource workspaces at all to add and remove starred while we're working on staffing activities. If we uncheck the starred here, you can see that it gets unchecked as well on the bottom. And then when we set it back, if you look at the bottom, it gets set back as well. Because we have the ability to change the starred here in the staffing, it is going against the resource object. So this particular caveat is with respect to making teams starred. So we can star teams here in the staffing workspace. And you can see the star show up here for the different teams, right? So I've starred crushers, and I can star the digital team. However, if you were to go into the resource workspace and look at the team tab, you won't see the star, even though there is a starred field in that workspace. And the reason is because that is a different object. It's not using the resource object. So if we go here, we go to the team object, team tab, and we have the starred field. You can see I have AI team and digital team starred, but I starred it here in this workspace. And as you know, if we pull out the column panel, you do not see any of the resource object fields, such as is staffed and so on. When you compare this column panel to the one in resources and roles, that is getting it directly from the resource object. But this is getting information from the team definition object, and therefore the star on this is different than the star on the actual resource. So when you're doing the star over here in staffing, it truly is on the team record, on the team's resource record, and you can star it here and you can utilize it in the staffing workspace. The next thing we want to talk about is filtering for starred. You can add it as a column, but you can also now filter. So now I can see all my resources that have been starred. Or if I remove the resource manager, I can see all the people that I've starred, even people that don't report to me if I remove this. But I'm just going to remove this for now. Just wanted to let you know that you can filter for this as well. And same at the bottom. You can put the starred field in the filter here as well. Let's take a look at the new view options for managing hard allocations. Immediately after upgrade, these numbers here still represent the soft allocation or planned allocation amounts. There's a new section here called Allocations Display, and out of the box it defaults to allocation. You can now show only allocation or only hard or both of them at the same time. If you select hard allocation, it will change the view and it'll give you the numbers for hard allocations. And you can see there's one here where there is hard, and this is because Cheryl has an allocation that is hard, and so we see the numbers here. If we select both, it updates the grid in both the top and bottom to show both allocation and hard allocation values. And when you open the modal, it'll show the columns as well. So let's open the modal. And you can see allocation and hard allocation has been set. Now you can change these labels in the administration attribute grid to be something like planned and hard or whatever you desire for your different fields. And you'll see them updated in the grid here as well. So if you have relabeled these to something else, they'll get reflected in this workspace. Now the final thing that we want to talk about is the behavior of the modal. So as you saw, we're only filtering by the resource manager. So we see everything that we see today for Cheryl is when we open it from the top, we see all active and all template, no template. So we see all active non-template investments for Cheryl. So if we open the modal, these are her investments. She has 3 investments. Now, if we go to the bottom, we'll see the same because there's no variation in filtering. We see all active, non-template investments always on the bottom resource histogram. Now, if we change the filtering on the top using either an investment field or an allocation field, then the modal will have a different set of results. So for example, you can see here that she has soft and hard investments, or we can change one of these and we can show templates. Let's show this. And we'll show this and see if there's any non-active and templates. So we'll see if there's any additional investments that are allocated to Cheryl. So now there are 4 investments, and let's open the modal and see what happened. Oh, there's a template. She's on a template. Well, she really shouldn't be on a template, but this is good to know. So we can actually delete the allocation or change it or replace it with a role or something like that. And if we go to the resource histogram down below for Cheryl and we open that, we will not see the template because this is always active non-template investments. Let's do another example and let's filter for hard allocations. Let's set this back to no templates and active only. And we'll add a filter for the booking status. We'll select hard. Now when we open Cheryl, we'll see when we open her modal that now there's only 1 investment. And when we open the histogram, we'll still see all 3 active non-template investments. Now you may notice that there are more resources listed now. And the reason they're listed is because we're now using a complex filter. Originally, we were just filtering on Resource Manager, a resource type of field. However, once you start adding additional fields, it will give us other resources in the list, and if the underlying children rows or allocation rows don't match the criteria, then there will not be an arrow under them, but we will still list them. And so the same would be true if we used an investment filter. So on the allocations by resource layout, your primary control is the resource object, and it would filter down the list. But once you start adding in any filtering for allocation staffing fields or any of the investment type fields on this particular layout, you'll get more records. And then you'll be able to find the information that you're looking for. So for example, here Joyce must have a hard allocation as well. And you could see that. And that concludes the demonstration of the new enhancements that are in 16.1.2 for the allocations by resource. We'll do a second demo in a minute for the allocations by investment with Dana. In this demonstration, you'll see how to manage allocations in the staffing workspace from the perspective of our investment manager, Dana Lewis. We'll log into the system as Dana and focus on how the allocations by investment workspace works with respect to her duties in doing staffing. Here you can see that Dana's already added the starred column and has been looking at some of her favorite investments. And you can see that when you expand an investment, you'll see the colorization of the over-under here. Now the numbers that represent here is the total amount. So if I were to look at the Crushers team, I would see that they're over allocated. Right? Now, if let's look at the toast message pop-up when we add a staff member to an investment. Let's do that. We'll add a resource. And you can see the allocation is successful. And the page refreshes and he's been added. So you can see now, even though he is 50% allocated to this investment, this puts him in the red for his total allocations. If we open up his profile from the bottom, we can see two investments, the digital banking application and the buy now, pay later. And you can see that he's overbooked for those periods. If we change this to 0, he'll change to green in this period for his total allocations. And then you'll see it get updated on the top, and you can see it's been updated. And it matches down below what he has for his total allocations. Now let's take a look at the modal behavior compared to what we saw for Ray. We can see that Crusher's team is over allocated. Let's see what investments Crusher's team is on from the bottom resource histogram. There's 5 investments here, and for the month of May, it's a total of 400 hours allocated. Now we are filtering the top investments, the allocations by investment list by the investment manager. So we may not be seeing all 5 investments for the Crusher's team. So let's see what we have here when we open up the modal from the top. So based on the filter, where Dana is the investment manager, she's only the investment manager of 2 of those 5 investments, and so the list is reduced, which is good because you only want her to focus on those investments that she has access to and wants to manage the allocations for this team. The other thing that you'll notice here is the over-under is showing for what is shown on the top panel here. And so you see that the person has only, the team only has 52 hours, or 52% in the month of July, and so it is green for this period because this is based on all of the filtering. And Dana also has the ability to look at the different displays. Right now we're looking at allocation, but you can look at hard allocation by itself, or you can look at both. And then when you open and close the modal, you'll see that there as well. And this concludes the demonstration for the new staffing workspace for Dana. Thank you for your time and attention. I hope you found this presentation informative.